Welcome to the Value Investor TV podcast. This is the podcast that helps you grow your wealth and become financially independent. My name is Becco, and my dear guest, Sunil.
Good evening, morning, whatever.
Wherever you listen to, whenever you're listening to the podcast, good evening, good morning, whatever the proper greeting is. Sunil, this is our third episode together. If you guys haven't listened to the previous two episodes, please do so, because this is a continuation of our conversation on Ebix. And, the first episode we did together, we talked a lot about the Indian market and why it's interesting and exciting opportunity for everyone, especially in the e-commerce space. And that's why we're here today talking about Ebix, which is a company that brought us together on Seeking Alpha. So let's just dive right into it, Sunil.
Okay.
So I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions on Ebix. Ebix is financial situation.
Sure. Okay.
So tell us about their balance sheet. What does it look like in terms of cash level? Do they have enough cash balance? Do they have manageable debt level? What does that look like?
Okay. So kind of like a quick kind of guide to looking through a balance sheet. You obviously want to check the debt levels. You want to check their debt to equity ratios. You want to see to what extent the assets are physical assets or just goodwill, which could be worth what they say it's worth, or zero. So in Ebix's case, you'll have to go back to the previous session Becco and I did. They bought a number of businesses in India as they were advancing to this next leg, EbixCash India, which could be 100-bagger for Ebix shareholders. So to fund all their acquisitions in India, they took on debt, which I actually prefer, because they could have issued a ton more shares, and maybe in hindsight now, when they think they should have, because the share price was 80 rather than 8 a few weeks ago, in hindsight, they might have actually issued some shares at $80 to fund the Indian acquisition, but they didn't. They issued debt. At the moment, there's $700 million worth of debt on their balance sheet, but the interest coverage, that is earnings before interest and tax, is 5 times the interest they need to pay on their debt, right? So it's interest cover is 5 or higher. So there's no solvency a debt problem with Ebix. I think that's probably great, because you can always retire debt, right? But if you issued shares, those shares have to be serviced and reduce your slice of the pie into perpetuity, right? Whereas you can retire debt. So I think it's wonderful that Ebix is adequately capitalized and did not issue lots of shares through its expansion into India.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that Ebix is preparing for is the IPO, and one of the reasons they're doing the IPO, there's a few reasons that they're doing the IPO, but one of the reasons that they're doing the IPO in terms of balance sheet is to really pay down the debt that they've incurred going into the Indian market. And so, if you could just add a little bit of color around their IPO, when that is, and what is that going to do to shareholders?
Yeah. Okay. So the IPO, in simple terms, could be the catalyst that leads to the discovery of this rough diamond. Okay, because IPO obviously has publicity; it gets into the face of investors. You have to do a roadshow. It will generate a lot of interest, right? Investment bankers are paid to market the story and go around and go to all the various fund managers and sell the story. So Ebix will IPO 70-ish, 80-ish percent. None of it, we don't know any of this, the detail, but 70-ish percent of EbixCash, which is the Indian division, will be IPO'd, and I think that's worth at least $1.7 billion. Okay, so if Ebix sells 70% of it, because they currently own 100% of it, that will easily pay off the debt. And what's very important is in terms of the upside for Ebix. The IPO was initially slated for second half of this year, 2020, and obviously COVID has deferred that. We now have it earmarked for the second half of 2021, by which time Ebix will be more integrated, a cleaner story, more presence in the Indian market, a bigger brand. It will be the catalyst to unlock value for Ebix shareholders. Another very important point, and these are some of the nuances that you never know about companies, is the rising acrimony between China and India. Um, you might know in the northern frontier, there's been quite a few skirmishes recently. So one of the large brands in India called Make My Trip is owned by Ant Financial, which is the Jack Ma entity, that you know, I'm sure you know about. So there's rising resentment towards Chinese owned companies, and Make My Trip, which is the leading travel brand, which I use as a proxy to value Ebix as, as a flawed, most conservative case. This kind of hostility to Chinese companies will improve the momentum for Ebix, right? So Ebix is an Indian story, right? There's a lot of talk in India at the moment about, there's the second wave of imperialism, about Americans coming to take, to colonize India again, the fear of China. So Ebix is a homegrown story. So it kind of adds to the national psyche, as opposed to WhatsApp or Google or whatever. So I'm pretty sure when the IPO hits the market, kind of national fervor, interest in a success story of made in India by India will help the Ebix launch IPO.
Yeah, that's a really interesting kind of twist to this whole story. One of the things that we mentioned in the previous episode, is Ebix's effort into in branding itself as household brand. And one of the things that they're doing is going into media business, partnering with media business, and also going into sports business. Can you talk a little bit about their effort into really trying to establish themselves as a
A brand.
like a really well recognized brand in India? Can you
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
through some of
So
that, Sonal?
yeah, yeah. So okay, so the first thing is like physical presence. Okay, so Ebix is not just a web page. Okay, Ebix has 300,000 retail outlets spread across the continent. Okay, these were the old forex bureaus that Ebix bought. Ebix now owns like 80% of the forex bureaus in India. They've just done an exclusive relationship with MoneyGram, so they have a physical presence in India. They recently sponsored the team. I'm sorry, I'm probably the one Indian in the world who is not obsessed with cricket, but that the team that Ebix sponsored won the famous 2020 challenge or whatever, with EbixCash, blazoned across the cricket's chest. So we'll have Ebix is getting a brand name both in the publicity, in terms of awareness. It has physical stores out there. It has an astute CEO that knows his way. Like, for example, the team he chose, won before he sponsored them and got to be the main sponsor before they won, and that's just been an enormous advantage for publicity.
Makes sense. And also, they have Ebix Studio, Republic Ebix
Oh yeah,
Studio.
the TV channel. Yeah, they've got a TV channel which is sponsored by Ebix and obviously does human interest stories, etc. But what's great is you can slant the picture above of e-commerce helping that rural Indian who used to walk 20 kilometers to buy a loaf of bread, and now paying it with his e-wallet and getting it dropped by Indian Airlines as it flies across the village. No, I'm not sure how it's delivered, but you can definitely use media to in innovative ways showing a company and how it's improving people's lives. And a few of the ads Ebix has done show that's the slant they're taking, which I think is also very shrewd.
Hmm. Yeah. So really, just to kind of recap all this stuff, it has been a fantastic business. It has a fantastic business here locally in the U.S., the insurance exchange, and then you have the second business, which is the EbixCash business. Uh, there has been a lot of follies, as you talked about in the previous episode. That was sort of the second act, kind of mumbling, fumbling, and
Yeah,
maybe trying to integrate it, putting these
yeah.
pieces together. And then we're now entering into the
Yeah,
third act.
we've decided to call the second act the litany of Indian blunders. But okay, you hopefully that whets your appetite to go and look it up. Okay.
Exactly. And then now we're entering into the third act. The third act, I think, is going to be, it's going to be explosive.
Yeah,
And I'm super excited for its future.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
with enough guardrails that you talk about plenty, you talk plenty about that in the Seeking Alpha articles, but having
yeah,
yeah, good management practice, good governance, good kind of board of directors, and the COO to kind of integrate everything with those guardrails in place. I think this is going to be a 100 bagger, like you said. I'm
yeah,
super excited about about that
yeah. I
potential.
I, I share Biko's, excitement. I mean, I got very depressed. Well, depressed. Yeah, I did. I did get depressed. I snug under my pillow and started crying as it fell from $90 to nine. But here is an incredible opportunity, because even today on a conservative basis, uh, it should be a two bagger. Okay, it should be $89, just using very conservative valuations for the Ebix US insurance business and the Ebix Cash Indian business, valued on a conservative basis. Okay, then you have the digital runway of them being a premier digital platform for e-commerce in India. Um, I personally have put management through a baptism of fire. I've got a cease and desist legal letter um, telling me to shut up or they're going to sue me for defamation. I have really grilled them on their mistakes, and I think they have started to listen. And so, in the most recent acquisition they made, one of my big criticisms was the lack of integration, right? And in that PR announcing the new acquisition, they said our first focus will be to ensure the proper integration of this business, right? So they are listening, even though they're sending me threatening legal letters, which I said, fuck you to. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. But anyway, I'm a shareholder, right? I'm allowed to ask questions and I'm allowed to be rude if it's warranted. And hell, I can be rude when it's warranted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the entire kind of Seeking Alpha community, I think, rallies around you, and these letters that you send to Ebix and Ebix IR and Reina and to board of directors most recently on kind of
Yeah, that's one
this is
thing we
another
didn't really touch on. Yeah,
right.
sorry, I don't know how much time you have, Biko, but so they've got a very weak board of directors that do not provide the required oversight over the CEO, who's a very talented person, but like every talented visionary, needs to be harnessed. by boundaries. And I think we're en route to having a revamped board of directors to do that job.
Hmm. Yeah, and to that point, you sent them a letter a couple days ago regarding that, and we'll hopefully hear more about that on Seeking Alpha.
Yeah.
So
And and as a Seeking Alpha author, I can see how many people are reading that article, which highlighted some of the problems. And I assure you, Ebix is aware of what I'm saying.
yeah,
Just judging by the number of people who have read that article, and the time zones and the source of where that reader came from, I am convinced Ebix is listening.
yeah, great. So where can people follow you on Seeking Alpha? You want to kind of talk a couple, a few things about
Yeah.
where people can
Okay.
reach you and how people can get in touch with you if they want to, have discourse with
Yeah.
you. Where can people find you?
Yeah.
Sonal.
Okay, so I'll just put a link on the bottom of this podcast for the dollar MoneyGram transfer that you can put in my account. No, that's a joke. Seeking Alpha is a great site, okay, for all you kind of burgeoning, uh, moving and shaking investors. I think it's the best financial website in the US today. It's got a great quant backup methodology. It's got incredible authors. The comments, that people make on an article are just as insightful as the article itself, because you get many different perspectives and questions on a stock. Um, I think Seeking Alpha is a great resource, and yeah, so you'll see my articles there, but you will see articles from accomplished, large, knowledgeable and astute analysts who are not tied to a bank, right? Often the bank has to keep a good relationship with Apple or Microsoft or whatever. And so the analyst reports are tainted by the need for a good commercial relationship with the client. Here on Seeking Alpha, you have independent analysts who don't answer to anyone. So you have far more objective analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely found, I've had a lot of value, got a lot of value out of reading articles, including yours, Sonal, and I think it's a website. I think it's one of the only websites that I use actually to kind of verify and check my own analysis. Of course, I think
Mm,
for all the audience that listen to our podcast, I think they listen to our podcast because they want to do their own analysis, right? To learn about
yeah,
value investing and
yeah,
going through the diligence of doing the
yeah,
analysis. But I think,
yeah,
Seeking Alpha is a good site where you can do your own,
yeah,
but also listen to other people's perspective
and learn.
and
Yeah, yeah,
and in fact, if you want, I think it's a good place to put your ideas out there and see how people react to it and get
yeah,
people's
yeah.
perspective
I
on your
mean,
ideas.
yeah, it's a wonderful place to write an article. You get great input from a very skilled editorial team, um, and they welcome new writers. So if you've got an idea, it'll give you an incentive to learn and present your idea in a rational, methodical way. Go for it. Submit an article to Seeking Alpha. I assure you, you'll get more out of you will get more out of it than you think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been a real pleasure talking to you, Sunil. I
The
really
the
really enjoyed
pleasure
it.
the pleasure has been all mine.
And we'll see how the Ebix story pans out from here. I'm super excited to kind of watch this up
Yeah,
close, of course, as a shareholder, and excited to see excited to see the third act, as we said.
yeah, yeah. And it has a happy ending, like every Indian Bollywood film.
Exactly. Great. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you
Thank
guys
you,
in the next
guys,
episode.
and thank you, Biko. Let's hope Ebix does what it should. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Bye bye.